But we cannot base our reactions to these killings on the popularity of the president. Popular or not, murder must stop. S-T-O-P. Stop. Stop the killings now.
That I am not a critic of the president at the moment. But let me just state also that the president has taken a huge step that no other president has done. That is to identify 5 generals, whether fairly or unfairly. It sends a huge signal that nobody will be exempted. The very fact that mayors, as we saw in the refectory a while ago, and his son are being presented before television is, I think, very important, because we're dealing with the perception of extrajudicial killings, but also dealing with the perception that big fish, like generals, are now being accused by no less than the President of the Republic of the Philippines, which is a good sign, at least as far as I'm concerned, with all due respect, for democratic principle or democratic rights. When those 5 generals were unmasked by the President, I heard, and I'm not going to call them bleeding hearts, there's some of them were saying, hey, you violated the rights of this general. My God, you know, I authored the plebs as a mayor, and I said policemen have an extraordinary amount of power under the social contract theory. We provide you with firearms, and when you use those firearms against the citizenry, we have the right administratively to have you suspended, even expelled, and pending appeal, you lose your job. In the same manner that you quoted chapter and verse the Georgian president who removed all the policemen and told them to perform their duties so that they can come back. And that is the point that I'd like to make. There is an effort, lest I be misunderstood right now, to address that problem. And the president has caught, I mean, many of us want to be president of this country. In this, they say there are 24 presidents here in this chamber. I'm sure that is not far from the truth. And I will not be a hypocrite, but I can tell you that as far as I'm concerned, when the President of the Republic unmasked 5 top generals and say, I'm laying it on the line, and 2 of them are going to be charged according to the National Police Commission, and I hope it goes on. That will be a great day in this country, and I'm pretty sure that nobody, including congressmen, senators, or even cabinet members or governors and mayors who are involved with drugs, will be able to sleep nights, because now people will know that it has been done to the big guys, and therefore it's a time for the poor to have their day in court and to get justice. Thank you very much.
This is not only an attack against me, but against any senator who dares to be outspoken. Pagkatapos ko, sino po ang isusunod sa inyo na mangahas na tumiwalag sa kanilang marcha, na hindi sasayaw sa kanilang marcha or sa kanilang musika? That is why, ultimately, this is an attack on the Senate as an independent institution.
Certain members of the administration are saying, hindi dapat ito unahin na Senate na investigasyon. That doesn't mean it's an attack on the Senate. It is freedom of speech. It is simply saying, sa laki ng problema at dami ng problema, siguro, i-monitor natin oversight sa human rights, pero in the same manner that our colleague is appealing, listen first, investigate first before judging her. Let me make the same appeal for our president, but actually he doesn't need it. Let me make the same appeal for the PO1s of this country. Those who are making 15,000 pesos only when the cost of living is 25,000 to 35,000 in our major cities. Those PO1s who we tell, hulihin mo ang pusher. Those PO1s who we tell na pag may barel, labas mo rin baril mo, barilin mo rin. Those PO1s who sometimes come home in a casket, or kung hindi man sa casket in the old administrations, not just the Aquino administration, in many administrations, would come home, nilabanan ang sindikato, anong baon nila pag-uwi? Suspension. At sasabihin sa asawa, wala silang gagawin. So I'm not against investigations, Mr. President, but we have limited time. Napakalaki ng opportunity natin to build this nation. So it's up to each and every chairperson. And I believe in every one of you. Ano bang uunahin ninyo? Now, if the former Justice Secretary and our colleague can come up with facts and not speculation, there are facts, as in the killings. But inimbestigahan din ba niya na isa to? Or is she telling us, ayaw imbestigahan to ng polis? Kasi kung ayaw to imbestigahan ng polis, ibang usapan yun. Pero kung iniimbestigahan to ng polis at hindi pa tayo kumpleto sa facts, and then we will go into that kind of hearings, it is for all of us to ask ourselves now, yan ba ang pinaka-importanting gawin natin ngayon? Yan ba ang pinaka-urgent? And let me also pose this question to all of us, Mr. President. Hindi lang naman po yung mga pulis ang nakabantay at nanonood sa atin ngayon. Nanonood ang mga drug lords. So if there's unintended consequences, like for example, I don't think the Justice Secretary intended to attack the Senate when he attacked one member. But I do know what you mean, my dear colleague, because once upon a time, I was in the opposition and I felt that an attack on me was an attack on the whole Senate. But the police are watching, the NBI is watching, PDEA is watching, the OFWs are watching, and we have to also be careful. If we think, Mr. President, na may hate campaign against the human rights, how do you think the police feel? How do you think the President feels? How do you think the PDEA, the NBI, etc.? Eh lahat na lang ng jokes tungkol sa politiko, sa police, at saka sa abogado. Lahat ng masasamang jokes. They're the butt of jokes. We're the butt of jokes. We have all the power and resources for image building, Mr. President. The police does not have this. So let me end there, Mr. President, and while welcoming our colleague and committing to her that we will not allow anyone to attack the Senate or destroy the Senate or to stop any senator from conducting their investigation or attending an investigation. It is also left up to us to decide what is most important, how we use our time, and it is up to us to make sure na yung unintended consequence of telling the police, tumigil-tigil muna kayo. Wala pa akong nangyayari. Lastly, Mr. President, naunahan na nga tayo ng Malacanang Many of our colleagues here, which both of us talked to during the last 3 months, have told us, Senator Soto, Senator Recto, Senator Gordon, many of you have proposed rehab centers. You predicted. The President continues to be amazed that more than 100,000 people are surrendering. Ang problema, anong gagawin mo sa mga nagsusurrender? Mga to, yung iba user lang, yung iba addict. Yung addict, pagka walang pupuntahan, babalik at babalik kahanap ng droga. Ang problema, Mr. President, kung hindi ako nagkakamali, shabu is now 200 to 400% more expensive than it was a month ago. In some places, it's 1,000% more expensive, which is good news in the sense that many people will stop and cannot have money, but it's also bad news because the addicts who are violent will rob, will steal, will try to get money to feed their habit. That's why the rehab centers are also urgent. So these are the points that I'd like to attach to the speech of our colleague. Yes, let's stand up for human rights. Yes, let us not allow any unjustified killings. Yes, let us not accuse falsely or let us not accuse without a factual background any senator. But let's also not accuse the police, especially the PNP as an organization, of rub-outs until we have evidence. And when we do have evidence or we have a smoking gun or even just smoke, kung sasabihin natin where there's smoke, there's fire, let's isolate it. So if it was one event here in Pasay, one event in Davao, yun ang sabihin natin. Pero sabihin natin, yung mga polis, o alam naman na polis rub-out, no. Tayo, galit tayo pagkasabihin lahat ng politiko corrupt Tapos we will do the same sa police. Anyway, Mr. President, I bid you a good afternoon and thank you for this opportunity.
Mr. President, I have been vilified and attacked not only in social media, but also by the President's men as a drug lord coddler and protector. I have been ridiculed and called names in social media. Photos are photoshopped, videos are spliced, lies are manufactured. The magnitude of the propaganda and misinformation is mind-boggling, considering that this is all directed at me. The lies are intended to show me as protector of the beloved drug lords. But the truth is, I was the only Justice Secretary since the 1986 EDSA revolution who dared to eradicate the dominion of the drug lords inside Bilibid. I was put to task by no less than the Speaker of the House as a sitting senator of the same Congress that he leads. According to him, a resolution will be filed for an investigation on my alleged role in the proliferation of drugs inside the National Bilibid prison. Mr. President, this not only goes against interparliamentary courtesy, where the House of Representatives investigates a specific member of its co-equal Senate. It is an affront to the Senate as an institution committed by none other than the leader of its co-equal body in Congress. But I will not use that time-honored principle as my primary defense. My first defense is common sense. The Speaker of the House promised the investigation of the former Justice Secretary, the Secretary who has been sued and brought to court by the same drug lord subjected to a raid and then secluded inside NBP Building 14. The Speaker intends to investigate me, who, like the President and PNP Chief Bato de la Rosa, also received death threats from drug lords, for my success in isolating them from the rest of the prisoners and for preventing them from further conducting their drug trade operations from within the walls of the National Penitentiary. My defense against the Speaker's call for my investigation in the House is not interparliamentary courtesy. That is your defense, Mr. President, when you defend me as a Senator of the Republic and this Senate as an institution from this blatant break of tradition and courtesy between the two houses, and whenever you decide to demand an end to all this foolishness before it blows up in our faces, as I so respectfully request now, Mr. President. My defense against all this vilification is my untarnished record and reputation as a public servant. Before this demolition job was launched against me, both in the social media and by the Solicitor General. My defense is my selfless dedication as the chairperson of the Commission on Human Rights, as a Secretary of Justice, and now as Senator of the Republic. Unlike the well-oiled social media operation that has been singularly organized to cause my vilification, I have no money. I have no resources. My friends consider it as a blessing that I was elected senator through sheer determination and the generosity of relatives, friends, and supporters. Last Friday, Justice Secretary Vitaliano Aguirre claimed that high-ranking DOJ officials from the previous administration were in the payroll of the NBP drug lords. Secretary Aguirre did not mention any name or my name, but going by the previous statements of the Solicitor General and the Speaker, one does not have to be a genius to guess who he is referring to. I am outraged that he has qualified this matter-of-fact statement with the actual truth, that he has yet to create a task force that will yet conduct an actual investigation on his foregone conclusion that indeed there were payoffs to DOJ officials. Mr. President, this is a Justice Secretary confused about his law school memory on how due process works.